Welcome to our next class in Mishna Berurah. We are in Siman Kuf Mem Zayin in Orach Chaim. Nice how that rhymes together. So we are in chapter 147 in Orach Chaim, continuing in the Mishna Berurah. We are also continuing the laws of reading the Torah. However, at this point in the laws, we are finished reading the Torah. We have just learned all the rules about reading them, all the rules about listening to them, all the rules about paying attention to them, and all the rules about not being annoying during services and talking. So, now let's talk about putting it away properly. Okay, so, and then, because very soon we're going to talk about how to have a proper shul. So today we're talking about rolling Torah. And there's this quite extensive section. Let's see how much we can get through. I wasn't quite sure if we would get through all of it, but we might be able to. It's not very long, but it's very interesting. So I'll see how many questions we get in the chat. But for right now, let's start with just going over the law. Start with 147.1. One may not hold the Sefer Torah uncovered without a proper wrapping. Okay. The Ramah adds that this is also the rule for all other types of Kisvei Kodesh, all other types of scrolls that are holy writings, so meaning things like the Megillas and things like that. But that's not our minute. However, it's important to be strict. If you haven't washed your hands, you should hold something else. Now, by Sefer Torah, even with washing your hands, it's not appropriate. That's only for other types of things, like holding Sifrei Navi or holding Sifrei MS, okay, like Eov and Tehillim, or any of the Megillos and Ksuvim. So the Chaber continues in the first halach over here. He says that the largest or the best person amongst all those who have been called should roll the Sefer Torah, and the custom is to sell and have that person who wants to roll the Torah buy that mitzvah to show love for the mitzvah. The Ramah says there are those who say if the jacket for wrapping the Torah on one side is made out of linen and the other side is made out of silk, you have to flip the silk side to the writing, to where the writing is facing, and meaning to where the script is in the Torah. Okay. However, such is not our custom to do that. I'll come back to that later. We'll talk about it more in a second. One may not. The Ramah continues. One may not roll the Sefer Torah with a ripped cover if there is another one that they could use. One may not make a cover for the Sefer Torah from those things that are old or that have been used for another purpose, especially if that purpose was for a mundane, secular purpose. So, for example, worn-out clothing. And look later on in Siman Kuf Nun Gimel. We'll also talk about the same rule when it comes to the synagogue. Just something quick. So the little jacket he's talking about is often referred to as a whipple. And it was the German custom was to have those on the Sefer Torah, and they're kind of cool. And they wrap around the Torah at all times to help to protect it as it rolls. So that is the way it is. It is protected by having this silk cover go over to cover the words that are exposed and aren't in the actual wrap itself. And then it comes and wraps on the outside. So it goes inside of the roll, and then comes back around to the other side and goes on top of the script again to cover it. Let's look at the rules over here. So let's start with not holding the Sefer Torah itself with your bare hands. So Mishna brings down from the Gemara that it is for this reason that a person is buried bereft of this mitzvah, which is to say that he has no reward for a mitzvah of holding the Sefer Torah with a covering in between his hands and the Sefer Torah itself. The intent is that if you seize the Sefer Torah in your hands, right, you're holding onto it, and you're reading it, you don't have the merit of reading it in a proper way. So too, if you also seize it to wrap it or to correct it. Now, even just touching it on the outside of the Sefer Torah with your hand is also prohibited. Okay? And this is only when there's no purpose in doing that. But if there's a purpose for it, such as you're trying to fix a Sefer Torah, like you're going to stitch up the Urios themselves, or you're going to stick things together, okay? You're sticking edges together, that you can use your bare hands for, okay? Especially if you can't figure it out any other way. Nonetheless, it's an imperative that a person should first wash their hands, okay? But if there's no purpose, then even with washing your hands, one should not be touching the Sefer Torah, just like the Ramah himself says. Okay. So, what does it mean to hold the Sefer Torah as it is uncovered or barren, okay, or bare? So the Mishna explains that if you don't have some type of clothing or cloth to put in between your hand and the scroll itself, and therefore, when you roll the Sefer Torah before you read it, or at the time of lifting the Sefer Torah, okay, because sometimes the Sefer Torah, the different squares with the writing on it, the Yerios themselves, are all over the place. And so the way to get them to line up so that way they're properly rolled together is to hold the top of each panel and to stretch them so that they're taut, okay, so they don't sag, and therefore they're equal on all sides as they wrap around the staves, so the eitzim themselves. And you shouldn't be touching that with a bare hand. Okay, what you should do is take your talus and hold it like that, or another intervening piece of fabric that's been used only for that purpose to touch the Sefer Torah. Now, when holding the actual amudim, right, the eitzim, the staves themselves, you can hold that without anything between your hands. But some are strict and they wrap the Sefer Torah while using the edges of their talus. Okay, and at the time of Hag, they do the same thing too. So if there's a place where the custom is not to do that, someone who wants to be strict about it should make sure that other people aren't noticing it, so it doesn't look like he's being overly stringent. And that we call something known as yuhara. We've seen yuhara, the word, come back before. It means that you're not obligated to do it, but you do it anyway. So in that situation where you make people think that somehow this is a requirement to do this fun thing with the talus, you shouldn't let other people see it. The Ramah brings down that you can be lenient by other types of holy manuscripts. So those things are talking about scripts that are written in what's called Katav Ashuris, the proper Hebrew script, okay? Not just the common Hebrew script, but the proper one. And written with dio, the proper ink, on the proper parchment, just like the rules of the Sefer Torah. But our books, which in his time they probably hand scribed, that doesn't count. And even nowadays, ours that are printed, with whatever, this stringency doesn't apply. And even before you wash your hands, you can pick them up and move them. Excuse me. Okay. But when you know your hands are yucky, even with other types of books, you should be strict. Okay. So like if you come out of the bathroom, wash your hands with soap to get the schmutz off, because you number one have to say the bracha. Number two, if you're going to touch svarim, you should be more careful. Okay. So we don't hold these other types of scrolls with a interposing fabric. And he's saying that even if they're done with all these different rules and requirements, just like a Sefer Torah, they're written in Katav Ashuris, written in cloth, they're written with dio, just like any Megillah, right? You see the Megillah, they're written on a nice parchment with a nice script, with the proper ink, that little glossy ink that's waterproof now. You don't have to hold that with an intervening fabric. Okay, but nonetheless, the Ramah says that you should be strict. Okay, which means that you should probably wash your hands and not hold them with regular hands. Okay, however, when you wash your hands, there's no reason to be strict for this at all. Unlike a Sefer Torah, where you have to always be strict with this. Okay, so and I will say personally, I've never seen anybody laying the Megillah, holding something intervening in between his hands and the Megillah itself. So the Gemara says that the person rolling the Sefer Torah, okay, this is brought in the Mishna. Berurah is bringing this down. we call that nowadays Hagba. Okay, so that's the main roller here. He gets reward for the whole laying because he's finishing it off. Okay, and that's why it's really important that people would sell it, because it's such a big mitzvah. And really, only most honored people should be able to do such a mitzvah. Okay, so the Bachar brings down the best of the seven, but the Mishna brings down that some people say that it's the guy who's the most honored in the whole shul should roll the Torah, even though he wasn't called to the Torah. And the Gra says this in the Beer Hagra as well. And so now that's why nowadays we don't take any of the people who have been called to the Torah to do the rolling. So we say that they roll it, okay? So that used to be what we used to do, but now we just let somebody who knows how to roll it. We honor them, any people, okay? Just to be nice to them. Now, if there's 2 yard sites on a day, this is why we have a lot of bishop. Let's say you have 2 yard sites, and one guy got an aliyah, so the other guy should get hagba, okay? So now people like to give glila, even though it's really important, like to give it to children, okay? Then the children have to be smart enough to kind of know what's holiness and what's not. So they're not bringing their dirty, stinky hands into the shul, and they should learn how to do glila. And this is brought from the Sefer Shar Ephraim. The Shar Ephraim also says that the gabbai, the second in charge over here, has permission to give hagba to anybody, okay, but not to somebody. He should give it to somebody. He should not give it to somebody whose hands are shaky or who lacks strength. Okay. Okay, so he essentially doesn't have the time to hold it up to wait for all the rolling. So that's where people come and sit down now, and also they should hold it up long enough people can actually read the script that's in front of them. Okay, and so that's an important thing to do. So we say that also we sell this mitzvah, which means to say that you don't really need to sell it, right? The Gemara doesn't require this. We just do that. But we do this now to sell it, so people think it's an important mitzvah. Okay? And we sell it for quite a bit. But there's no reason to hold up the whole shul for that. Okay? But someone who's buying it comes before the case of the gadol that we mentioned earlier. Okay, the important person. And also, if nobody buys it, and the Gabayim are like, all right, take wherever you want to. So just give it to the best guy in the shul. So we sell nowadays. We sell a lot of the things that go on in the shul in order to have lots of people contribute to keeping the shul up and running. Going back to the rolling the Torah used to be rolled with a little cloak around it, or a jacket. So this jacket was the lower one, which is the one that fits up against the script, and not the other jacket that goes over the top of the entire Torah. Okay, and so that's why the same side has to go against the script at all times, because you have to make it, just like the Aron, which was always at all times covered in gold. Okay, that's why it's making this requirement. However, we didn't retain this minhag. So the Magen Avraham actually brings down that the best thing to do is to actually follow what the Ramah says. The Gra agrees with the Shulchan Aruch that there's no requirement for this whatsoever, and so therefore that a person should make a Torah cover with 2 sides that are exactly the same, even if there's linen in the middle to kind of help it retain the shape. Okay, so just like when you build an Aron and you cover the Aron in gold, that has to be covered inside and out. And then you could put in the middle. You could put just like the Aron, the Aron HaKodesh that was in the holy temple, right? The holy ark that was in the temple itself. The wood was in the middle, and the gold was around the outside. You should also do that with the parochas and all the other things spread out along all the tables. That's how you should do that. Now, you shouldn't put things that are made from wool and put linen in the middle, because then that would be a problem of kilayim. But the parochas that you hang in front of the aron does have to have that problem, because you don't wrap themselves in it. And in fact, some people say that if you make the Torah cup out of kilayim, in general, you are not fulfilling the mitzvah properly. So therefore, always don't make them out. We make them out of polyester. We also don't use a torn jacket. So this is the one that goes over it, also one that's directly on top of it. Okay, even if they're new, when there's a tear, we just don't want to use it anymore. Okay, and let's see. Also you can't reuse materials. The Mishnah explains, because this isn't honorable, and if you did that, so people say that maybe you could still use it, but this is not appropriate to do. And if it's only if it was meant to be used for something holy originally, and it could be appreciated to be used for a Torah, but you're not allowed to go ahead and take things that were used for yucky purposes and put them to use for the Sefer Torah. And so what we see from here, Mishnah explains, is that everything that gets used in the synagogue are called tashmishe kedusha. They're all used for a holy purpose, and especially here where it's serving the Torah, it needs to be made from good new things. And so therefore, at first, when you want to make something new, it has to be taken for something that hasn't and previously been used for some type of regular everyday purpose use. Okay, and we're going to see that later on in Siman Kuf and Gimel. Okay, and all the Achronim seem to say that that's a problem. But things that are used for a mitzvah, okay, like your talis bag, you can use that for other purposes, like put candy in it. Okay, and the Sefer Beis Hillel and Eli Rabbah, they agree that the talis itself, you could even use it for a regular purpose, like to keep yourself warm in it, for example. But not for a disgusting use, so something like that. The Taz says in Yoredea Reish Pei Beis 282 that these are the laws of Sefer Torah. He says that the usages of items for the purposes of holiness is permitted when you've used it for holiness previously. But another type of secondary use, might be okay. So you can't. So if you wanted to remove something from its holiness, you don't want to use it for that purpose. Let's say you're holding something to hold something else. So that's what the Taz says. The Magen disagrees, and he says that maybe you don't have to worry about this, but you shouldn't use things that have not been used for kedusha purposes for the kedusha for holy purposes, and holy purpose things shouldn't be repurposed for secular things. Even if it's just like a secondary purpose, even though it helps, it might seem like it's the same level. It's not perfectly the same. It's not the same. Okay, and these opinions get repeated. So people tend to follow this lenient opinion that as long as it's some type of incidental use to something holy, even if you're changing the use slightly, that's okay. Now I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of places when they have their old Torah covers and stuff like that, they usually take them and just hang them somewhere on display because they serve a purpose. They don't want them to be forgotten. We also said that you shouldn't use things that are old for using Sefer Torah, which is that even though you haven't used them for anything, it sounds like you couldn't use them, but actually what we're saying is that old things, if you never use them, you can still use them. So the Ramah is also saying that even new things, but you made some type of regular use out of it. So, for example, you started off making a wrap for a dress, okay, and then you're like, no, this is better as a Sefer Torah cover. That would be prohibited to go ahead and use that for the Sefer Torah. Okay, so that is the first sif over here. All right, took a ton of time. That's what I was saying. I wasn't sure how long this was going to take today. All right, second halach over here. Someone may go ahead and purchase the right to extend the Torah covers to the person who's wrapping Sefer Torah, the Golel, The Goel can't complain about who's handing him the Sefer Torah covers, because even though that some other person has purchased the wrapping itself, the glila, they didn't purchase the right to pass along the covers to it. And so too, in places where they have the custom to spend money to purchase the taking out the Torah and putting away the Torah, the Shliach Tzibur can't say, no, get out of here, because this is not something that actually belongs to the Chazan himself. Okay, so Mishna points out, but the Chazan himself, whoever's leading services, has to go ahead and move. So if the Shliach Tzibur says, I don't want this guy taking it out, then you have to wait for him to take it out because he's purchased that right. Okay, halacha 3, the person who rolls Sefer Torah should make sure that the urios are placed exactly on the stitching spot. So that way, if it were to rip, it would rip along the stitch. Okay, so when you're doing the rolling, you need to keep the stitch in the middle. I have to correct people on this all the time, by the way, and I think someone should be more aware and conscious of the simple fact that when you have three columns, 1, 2, 3. You need to pick the stitch is usually going to be right here, and when you roll it, the stitch is to be right in the middle when you can see it right there, and that's where it needs to be. Okay, so now rolling the Sefer Torah. So this one's also a little bit long, so we may have to stop here for today because it's getting a little late. I know people don't have tons of time for this, but if you roll the Sefer Torah, if you roll the Sefer Torah, you roll it from the outside. Okay, so and when you tie it from the inside towards the face, right? So the scroll gets rolled like that, so you're facing the rolls here, but when you tie away from that, and you tie it facing the other side. Okay? The Ramah adds, so when the Sefer Torah is standing in front of you, the writing should be facing your face. And then you start to roll from the outside. And afterwards, after you finish rolling it, you should tie it tight with the strip, okay, along the inside of the rolling. So that way, when you want to read it, you find that you undo the knot from the inside, and you don't need to go ahead and flip the Torah around to get that thing done. And this seems to be talking about a case where one person is doing all the wrapping. But now we have two people doing the wrapping. So one person does the lifting, and one person rolls it and ties it and wraps it with the bee. Okay, so that person needs to make sure that the writing is still facing the person who lifts the Sefer Torah. And so is our custom. Okay, because that's the way to do it. So Berurah explains that when the Sefer Torah is being lifted, so you don't want to think to explain this is that when you're rolling it from the outside, meaning that you're holding the staves of the Sefer Torah, the eitzim, okay, and you're going to show it to people that you have to hold this up. The writing faces all the other people. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to have it where the writing is actually facing people, because if you turn it the other way, you're going to not show very much of it, okay? Because then you're going to have the back of it facing your face. So when you show it to other people and you want to see that you roll it, it's also going to have an effect that you're actually rolling it. So you do the rolling from the back side of the Sefer to the inside, because if you want to have it so it's facing your face and not away from your face. And so what it's teaching us is that the mitzvah is to show people the writing when you lift it. And this is mentioned in the Masechah Sofrim. Nonetheless, the writing is to face your own face, okay? The person holding the Sefer Torah. And that's why during Hagbah, you want to hold it up in front of you and then bring it down in front of you. And same thing too as you're rolling it, because right now you're dealing with the Sefer Torah. And that's sort of the honor of it, is to know that that the Sefer Torah is being read and contains the information which we know is in there. And so when we say roll it from the outside in, we're saying that the starting of the reading comes from when it's on the outside, coming to bring it into the inside. Okay, and then you start to roll it, which Mishna explains that when you first start to put on the wrapping itself, okay, the little wimple or the belt or whatever it is that you have, you need to go around the outside first. So the Machzis Shekel says that this is generally what, based on what the Ramah says, that the person who did the lifting also is doing the rolling. Okay, and so that's why if you start with the rolling and if you don't have it face towards you, that you might drop the Sefer Torah. Okay, so because this way, if you have it towards you, you're going to go opposite it, which is not anything when the Sefer Torah is facing the other way. Okay, because it's not going to fall when it's facing towards you, and you're going to wrap the string around it because you're tightening it in front of you with um, a band. Okay, so that's why you're starting to roll that around it. But our custom is that one person lifts the Torah, and the other person rolls it, where there's no concern about it falling because the person who's doing the rolling is standing before the Torah, where it wouldn't be able to fall. Okay, and so if a person was sitting away from the other side, you would notice if it fell, especially if you just put it on the side. And you also want it to stay towards you as well, with the writing facing towards your body and your face, and that's our custom. Okay, let's got a couple more in here in Mr. Berurah. Okay, so let's talk about how we use people to roll it. So when we talk about two people rolling it, what we're teaching you is that the script itself should be facing towards your face, which means the face of the person doing the rolling, which means that after you pick it up, and one person is going to roll it, the 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 writing still has to face the face of the person, one of the people doing the rolling. Okay, and because he's engaged in rolling it, and that's why he needs to face it, and not to have the stuff facing the other guy, facing outward from the guy who's holding it. So that's not how we do it. Okay, and that's not the custom. How to do it either is to flip it and have the writing face everybody. And so therefore, the keeping it facing that way is it keeps us from having the problem of the Sefer Torah falling. But the truth is that if one person is raising it, one person is rolling it, so the main point of Galila is the person who's holding Sefer Torah. So even though he's called the Hagba guy, he's really the Hagba and Galila guy, and the other guy is just like a secondary Galila guy. And so when we say that the Iker Galila is about the guy who picks it up, that's to say that the Hag was a bigger mitzvah than the actual rolling itself. So therefore, when you give him a Torah to lift and to roll, he just can't do both things when he's picking it up. So we have a second person to help him. But if it's too heavy for him, he needs the other guy to help him organize it and to wrap the thing around it. So then, that makes that the Iker mitzvah, and the other guy is kind of like barely there to help out. So just to give a little clarity on those things. Let's see. Oh, yeah. I think we'll come back to the last four halachas next time, even though they're not. The last few are not super long, but I think we've overstayed our welcome. We got through a lot today. There's a lot to learn about rolling Sefer Torah and how the minhag has changed a little bit over time. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to learning with you next time.